So, guys, I've been accused of Zionism. Apparently, that's punishable by death, according to some. I know this because I keep getting added to lists, and they say that they're making lists of Zionists that will face their final judgment with a Glock. I also have gotten much more direct death threats than that, and also comments like, a Zionist must be wiped off the face of the earth. I mean, that's pretty much flooding my feed these days, and I'm sure other people's. I'm sure they mean no harm. But I guess I have to admit that I am indeed guilty as charged. I do believe in the right of Israel to continue existing and not being wiped off the face of the earth. I also don't believe that Jews should be sent back to Europe. You know, that place that they escaped from for all sorts of, I would say, very valid reasons. And I don't know, they keep forgetting about these, 70% Israeli Jews who actually come from mostly Arab countries that chased them out, took their properties, sometimes, some friendly killing went on, and so on. Talk about ethnic cleansing. But it's weird because people don't seem to talk about that much. Weird. But okay, let's go back to Zionism, which is most definitely, it's not a way to hide hatred for Jews. No, absolutely not. I mean, everybody knows that if you spot a Jewish person in the wild, like Canada, US, London, they're clearly a Zionist, despite you having no idea what they think at all on the topic. All you have to do is name them a Zionist and they become a Zionist by default. An interesting approach. And obviously, a hospital with sick children, that's a Zionist venture. Must be immediately, protested because it's called, Mount Sinai. And then, all the Jewish businesses that are being defaced, automatically Zionists. And that guy with the who showed up at the Jewish deli with a knife and spewing anti-Semitic slurs, he's not anti-Semitic. He's just anti-Zionist. You should know better by now. No. And then there's even I think it's totally fine to call all Israelis and Jews Nazis. Paint little swastikas. In fact, they're worse than Nazis, right? And meanwhile, other nations that commit documented atrocities on a mass scale far greater than whatever Israel is being accused of, genocides, provable, documented genocides, they don't get that same treatment. I guess it's just, maybe it's just, an internal dispute, perhaps? And that Amy Winehouse statue with the Star of David necklace, to represent her Jewishness, which was replaced with the Palestinian flag, it's not anti-Semitic either. It's just anti-Zionism, obviously. Even though Amy Winehouse, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Amy Winehouse has been dead for years and hasn't actually made any statements about the current geopolitical issues in the Middle East. But I could have that wrong, because maybe she came back to the dead and called Adele or something and let her know. I don't know. But look, obviously the brave critics of Zionism have the ability to read minds. After all, they seem to think that being a Zionist means that we want to see children dead. We think that Palestinians are subhuman. We think that these goys are beneath us, and all sorts of other things. Despite the fact that the vast majority of us clearly does not think any of these things. But of course, stupid me, they're mind readers. And they know the thoughts in my mind better than I do. And I mean, what do I know? I'm just a lowly, evil Zionist who must be destroyed. And of course, it's quite interesting that they demand that we honor indigenous populations. But we can't go back and we can't honor the Jewish indigenous populations that have lived in that part of the world for, thousands of years ago. Also, we cannot give back the land to the indigenous people of, say, Canada and the U.S. Instead, they must settle for land acknowledgements and I guess the occasional casino license here and there, because that was too long ago. So instead, we have to go to a shorter time period, right? And we must recognize only those who came before more recently. And of course, Israel is absolutely unique, having been established so recently in 1948. It's completely unique. Whereas the ancient state of Pakistan was established a whole 1 year before that on August 14th, 1947. But I digress. Okay. Let me state what I believe as a so-called Zionist. A label, by the way, that was given to me, not requested. Just to clear that up. And here's the thing. I speak for myself and only for myself, despite how much the anti-Zionists love to cherry-pick a few examples here and there of extremists and apply them to the whole group and paint them all with the same brush. So here's what I think. I want to see Israel continue to exist. I do. And if that makes me a bad person in your eyes, so be it. I want to see Palestinians and Israelis prosper and cooperate and live together side by side and have normal relations. I want an end to all violence, and that includes settler violence. I don't believe that Israel is completely free of faults. And I also don't think that anybody criticizing Israel is immediately an anti-Semite. I mean, that I would be an anti-Semite, and so would most people I know, because we do indeed criticize certain Israeli actions. But what makes somebody anti-Semitic is when they cherry-pick information, when they spread false information despite being corrected repeatedly, and the fact that they hold Israel to a different standard than any other entity. But of course, that could also be attributed to stupidity and ignorance. And I will let you decide which applies. But here's the thing. If you want peace, if you actually want peace and not to just chant about peace, you cannot have peace when one entity swears to wipe you off the face of the earth and takes actions to do so. You can't have peace when a terror organization runs the country and oppresses its own people. You cannot have peace when schools receive millions in aid and then just work to indoctrinate children to hate their neighbor. You cannot have peace when the vile, horrific actions of October 7th are glorified, and they're seen and spoken about as legitimate acts of resistance or denied. Meanwhile, the entity that perpetuated these acts has sworn to do it over and over and over again. That is not a pathway to peace. And you cannot have a peace until both sides agree that each of them has the right to exist. And the people within these entities rise up to end the violence. And as a horrible Zionist, who spent part of my childhood in Israel, under bombs, with frequent bombings and terror attacks and having to wear gas masks and go to shelters. Despite all this, I know that people wanted peace so very much did they believe in peace. I know I did. The fact is, I still do, as do many others. To believe that the vast majority of Jews or Israelis want to see people just die across their border is an act of revenge or just hatred or supremacy. That is based on nothing but hate. It is not based in fact. It is a lie. It is an evil lie. If what you want is peace, and not to perpetuate an endless cycle of violence and hatred and entitlement, then you have to consider something that's truly radical, like having conversations, real conversations that acknowledge the complexities of the situation and work together for genuine solutions that prioritize the well-being and safety of both Palestinians and Israelis without vilifying either one of them. Because peace is not achieved through demonization or bad puns or angry emojis. Peace is not achieved through chanting slogans or spray painting buildings or making people feel unsafe. That is not how peace is achieved. The way that peace is achieved is when we can sit together and share hummus and pita and talk and acknowledge the humanity in each other and the challenges that we both face. And I very much hope that we can do that one day, because I quite like hummus and pita.